cold weather continues, is actually providing a lot of, mist types of scenery during various times of the day anyways. And what I read today, how about this one? More issues with drones, and this one was sporting events. So what's going to happen here? Are they going to demand more regulations on drones? This one here says, Roger Goodell speaks to Congress about drone security issues. As it says here, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell spoke to the congressional leaders Monday about the ongoing security issue of drones on game days. A person with knowledge of the meeting told the Associated Press. The person, speaking to the AP on condition of anonymity because the discussions weren't publicized, said Goodell also joined Washington Commanders controlling owner Josh Harris in a series of meetings concerning the RFK Stadium proposal and other league matters. Unapproved drones have become a problem for various sports leagues. There was a stoppage during the AFC Championship game in Baltimore last January because a drone violated the restricted airspace. Another game in Baltimore, November 2023, was delayed twice because of a drone. The NFL said there were 2,845 drone flights into restricted airspace during games in 2023. While that number sounds crazy, I guess, to the average person, the radius in terms of the restricted airspace is pretty huge, and they consider every type of drone, doesn't matter how big it is, as a quote, I guess you could say, some kind of aircraft that would be identified in this way. For example, you could be some kid flying in the backyard of your house with some, 10-gram drone that can't fly any higher than 10 feet or something like that. That would count technically as a violation of the airspace. It says the Federal Aviation Administration prohibits drones from flying within 3 nautical miles, about 3.45 miles of stadiums during major sporting events with a seating capacity of 30,000 or more. The ban starts 1 hour before the scheduled time of a game or event and extends until 1 hour after it ends. The FAA banned drones within a radius of 30 nautical miles, about 35 miles of Allegiant Stadium for the Super Bowl last February. In my opinion, one of the problems with this is just classification in terms of what you consider as a drone that's a threat of sort within that area. So what's too much? Can you imagine if they did this just for any type of regular vehicle, for example? Like during a sporting event, you can't drive a car, you can't drive a motorcycle, a bicycle is included. Hey, if you're on a skateboard, for example, that's considered a violation too with that large of a radius. Like, at what point does it become ridiculous when you don't have clear guidelines in terms of what you consider as a danger or a threat to people around the area versus somebody flying a toy and all that? I mean, there is such a thing as going overboard. I've said it from day one, it depends on what you're using and how. Like here, you should focus more on protecting, that area if that is a huge concern, like around the stadium. Have some kind of anti-drone measure, if that's what you want to call it. I mean, how else do we do it in life? If you have someone, for example, you think maybe a terrorist or something like that going to the stadium, you don't just arrest everyone, for example, that's a human being walking around the area saying, oh, that's it, you might be the terrorist. You have people assigned to try to find out who the person is. If there's someone in the game that does something like, streaking or something like that, you have security to take care of them, correct? I mean, it just seems like it's going overboard for people that don't really, understand the tech completely in terms of how people use it anyways. Whatever happened to basic logic and common sense? They're making it more complicated, in my opinion, than it needs to be. And this is kind of an interesting read. Apparently here in Canada, we're gonna buy more drones for things like border security. It was related to how in the US, they say if we don't potentially fix, the issues of people crossing borders, illegals and all that, bringing drugs and so forth, then we'll be hit with tariffs. So here, this one here says, Canada to buy helicopters, drones to meet Trump's demand for tighter border security. It makes me curious there too, in terms of what they mean by buying drones and helicopters. Do they have to be US made, for example? It says, as US President-elect Donald Trump threatens to hit Canada with tariffs that could weaken the country's economy, the Trudeau government is promising to tighten up monitoring at the shared border to address its concerns. On Monday, Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc told David Cochrane, host of CBC's Power and Politics, that the Commissioner of the RCMP and the President of the Canada Border Service Agency have prepared a list of additional measures that they think would be important for government to approve quickly. A lot of it is equipment they already have that we would simply supplement. We would add additional helicopters, drones, he said. LeBlanc accompanied Prime Minister Justin Trudeau last week to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Trump and a handful of incoming senior administration officials and their spouses. It was a social evening initially, LeBlanc said. Nobody gave us a checklist. It says, we talked about a shared commitment to do the work. We want to do the work with them. He said the federal government shares entirely Trump's focus on fighting fentanyl production and illegal immigration. So nothing hostile according to this anyways. And one funny thing that came out of this, apparently it was a joke where if the US imposed these tariffs on Canada, then Canada could, I suppose, impose tariffs back on them, or at the same time it would just make things more expensive for people in the US. And the claim was, our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said in doing so, there's no way, I guess, the country could survive without ripping off the US to the tune of $100 billion a year. And then apparently with that, I guess the Donald Trump said Canada could become the United States 51st state and Trudeau could serve as its governor. Apparently that's the claim going online. They say it's a joke and all that. Well, can you imagine that? If all of a sudden Canada became part of the US, what would you guys think about that? I still find it a little crazy when you think about it in terms of our landmass size and population. Apparently places like, what, I don't know, New York or something like that, or California has more people than the entire country here. That's kind of crazy. If that actually happens, based on everything you guys seen, what I've shown you so far, what state in the US culturally and let's just say scenery wise do you think is the closest to here in Vancouver, BC? All right, see you guys later.